All right. So we are here today to build a 2023 communications plan. So hopefully I'm sure most of you are thinking about 2023 and you may have some ideas, you may have jotted them down. You might even have a formal written plan down, and you're kind of here just to see our structure of things, see if there's any ideas that you might walk away from. I don't know about you, but Nicole and I talk about this a lot. We get really jazzed up about planning season. I love brainstorming with all the mighty citizens, talking about things that we accomplished for the year, about what we want to accomplish next year. It really makes us feel set up for success. And hopefully by the end of this webinar, you will feel like you have the tools to do the same. So quick reminder, as I mentioned in the beginning here, our team of experts from the entire Mightier Marketing series are going to hop on at the end. So be sure to stay until the end. We'll answer all of your burning questions, anything related to marketing and comms. We'll have the experts on to answer. Just a little bit about me. Again, Director of Brand Marketing here at Mighty Citizen. So that means I handle all of the internal marketing and communications that our audiences see and read. I have about 13 years of experience in marketing. Around 10 of that is in the association space. That is actually how I know Nicole, how I originally knew Nicole. And we always like to put a strength and weakness in here so you can get to know us a little better. My strength is definitely marketing strategy. I'm just kind of, like I mentioned, getting excited about planning. It's similar. I love brainstorming with groups of talented people and coming up with plans and campaigns that are smart and strategic. It's just like one of my favorite things about my job. So then my weakness is my sassy 4-year-old. I should say
I think she's a strength too.
Yeah, she is. Yeah. I should say 4.5 because she definitely makes sure everyone knows it's a half in there. I also hear from parents that there are kind of varying levels of this sassiness. So I'm kind of dealing with it in toddler near kindergarten sassy, and I hear the preteen is like a whole new level, which I know Nicole knows a bit about. That
oh no, I am full on teenagers now.
It's not something I'm looking forward to, but all the stages are also special for many reasons too. So.
Yes, all valid and very, very important. So guys, I am Nicole Araujo. I'm the client engagement director here at Mighty Citizen. I've been working with associations for over 20 years. I work very closely with Brianna and the team here, and I just have to give a couple of shout outs before I give you my strengths and weaknesses. I have to really commend our content team here. The marketing team is excellent at putting together content that really helps organizations to be mightier. And I'm honored to be presenting with you today, Brianna, but really our experts are fabulous. The content we put out is fabulous. And I just want to say thank you because it's a lot of work. And I'm going to tell you all, it all starts with a communications plan. So behind the scenes here at Mighty Citizen, we're working on our own communications plan for 2023. So we're really excited to be doing this with you here today. So Mindy, I'm also going to make a note here because I'm seeing people chatting, but I can't respond to anybody. So just so you know, I see your chats, but I can't respond to you. So I just want you to know that. It's great to see everybody. I just need to update these photos on here. We're going to make that happen at some point. So get your photo taken with me, Genevieve, and we'll make it happen. As for strengths, communication is definitely my strength. I love people. In general, if you met me, I'm definitely an extrovert and I'm definitely love to talk to people, get to know them, understand their stories. Face-to-face really is my favorite form of communication. But in the virtual world, Zoom has certainly become a favorite of mine as well. And I just think that I'm even a fan of the handwritten note. Like I love that type of communication too. On the weakness side, it's also communication, guys. I don't think that anybody would describe me as being succinct. I can make a short story long in some cases. So if Brianna needs to kind of nudge me forward as we go through this presentation, you'll see it. And heck, you can razz me in the chat too. So for those of you who are not familiar with Mighty Citizen, we have been supporting mission-driven organizations for over 23 years. And when we say mission-driven, we mean associations, nonprofits, institutions in higher education, and then government agencies. And we really help our clients to increase their revenue, build their awareness, and really better their communities through branding, messaging, campaigns, websites, and now analytics, kind of any way that we can, from content strategy through understanding your users through the end development of a campaign and delivery. So, and our experts, if you haven't seen us in the other webinars that we've had throughout the month here, you may see us at ASAE or Association Forum or case events or even the Association of Fundraising. So look out for Mighty Citizens, make sure to say hello, and we're happy to share our expertise with you. So I don't know about you, but in the communication space, we face a lot of challenges. Guys, current events, 2022, in no ways was it a 2020. But the reality is that it is a continuation of 2021. We're still dealing with the aftermath of a pandemic. New variants are still popping up. Heck, we have monkeypox now. In-person events are still being questioned in person versus virtual. What are our safety precautions? Company culture has been really a hot topic this year. DEI initiatives, definitely the work styles, the constant dance of should we be in person? Should we go back to the office? Should we do 2 days a week? Should we go completely virtual and get rid of our space? These are all questions that we hear. I hear a lot of organizations going on a hybrid approach. We've seen a lot of staff changes. Guys, this was the year of the Great Resignation. And here at Mighty Citizen, as we were trying to hire our own team here, I mean, we've expanded to 42 employees right now. And that's a lot of growth. But to do that, we've noticed we had to change how we were hiring folks because it's a hot commodity right now. If you see somebody that's talented, they can really get a job anywhere in the virtual world. And you have to be quick. You got to snatch them up. We're still having supply chain issues. We thought toilet paper was going to be an issue for, we thought that was fixed. Well, now it's actually petroleum issues, which impacts everything. No matter what you want, it costs way more to deliver than it did before. Delivery times aren't what they used to be. You're paying more at organizations to put your annual meetings on. Even the food to get there it's costing just a lot more. And that makes it very hard to stay engaged with your audiences. Do they have the money to renew, to donate, to stay active with your organization? We have governance issues. Sometimes that approval process can be difficult. Sometimes leadership doesn't see the value in marketing and communications, which we fight that a lot because without it, you don't have revenue. So we'll give you some more insight onto that. But sometimes there's just too many cooks in the kitchen. You're waiting on other departments. And by the time you get something to a point that it should be able to be produced, it's too late because it took too long to get through the process. So you got to figure out a way to be a little bit more nimble. Data security and privacy is an issue. We discussed in our earlier webinars this month, the GA4 and third-party data and privacy email updates. We'll send links to that. I know Mindy's in the background going to add some of those things to it, but I'm going to add technology to this. Many of us are implementing new technology. What was it in 2021? We implemented HubSpot, but really it was 2022 that we really got to use it. And there's a learning curve with any of these items. And it takes a long time to put in an AMS or a new donor software. So those are things that you have to consider in your communication plan because it does impact your staff time. GA4 was a huge hot topic this year. They put us on that timeline, and even though they give us 2 years, it's still last minute, and then you're still having to wonder, am I going to have my year-over-year data, right? So it puts a lot of communicators in a panic. And then lastly, overload of information. And do we trust the information that we're getting? Is it a reliable source? Who do we communicate to? How do we get our audiences to listen to us when we alone are overwhelmed, let alone our audiences are being overwhelmed? So we have to be really strategic in how we send that information and how we represent ourselves and where we're getting our information from. So as you can see, there are so many ways that we communicate with our audiences, and it is overwhelming beyond overwhelming. Talk about an overload. We communicate through direct mail. We communicate through our websites, through webinars and social media. And there's just so many different things, meetings and magazines. We're sending text messages. And I heard yesterday there was an organization at another event I was at that was delivering voicemails. So there's so many different ways to communicate. We're surveying our clients. We're doing press releases. We are sending out videos and podcasts and emails and newsletters and promotions. And guess what? We want them to read every single one of them. And you know what? They're not. I'm just telling you that now. They're not. But we have to figure out what are those messages that are most important. Where are they going to read them? most reliantly, and how we get in front of them and keep their attention.
Yeah, we definitely feel this internally. We're a small team too, and our internal communications team. So there's always just so many things to keep up with and so many communications channels to do it through. And then we have multiple audiences we're trying to reach, and like, where are they all at? I have to imagine y'all all sort of feel the same way.
So tell us in the chat, how do you want to communicate with Mighty Citizen, right?
Right. Let us know.
Right. Right. Mindy, take that down, please.
All right. So
over tacos, I am in, Michelle.
Well, yeah, here we go. So by the end of this presentation, you'll be able to understand how to own your communication plan. So, that means what it looks like, how to report on it, who to report it to, and just kind of in general, who should care about it. And we're going to look at what should be included in it. So those are things like goals, activities, tactics, just what's in it. And that's going to help you show the value of what you're going to do next year. And we're going to talk a lot about the value of marketing in this as well. Managing your plans, we're going to look at that kind of to make sure that it stays relevant for your team, but also your leadership and your stakeholders. And then I think Mindy likely shared this, but just in case she didn't, she can share it again at the Dash Comms plan. There's the communications plan template. It's a direct download. It'll directly download into a Word doc for you. You can grab it now if you want to follow along with the steps that we're going to go through, or you can just use it later after this webinar. Okay, so before we get to too much further, I wanted to get just kind of a pulse on where everyone's at. If Mindy, if you could pop open that poll. This is asking if you have a marketing/communications plan. So some of the options here is, yes, it's written down. Yes, but it lives in many places, including my head. Not yet, but you're in the process. Not yet, but you plan to, or no, we don't have it. And just a quick note while we're doing that, we say marketing/communications because we don't really distinguish between the two. Most of our clients are doing both of these. The departments are the same. So sort of in our mind, communications just kind of covers everything. All right. Okay, Mindy, if you want to close that and look at the results really quick, I'm curious what it shows. See, cannot see. Have you posted can you post the results? There, thank you. Okay, let's see. 28% say yes, and it's written down. That's awesome. Yeah, 31% yes, but it lives in many places, including my head. We got 15% not yet, but you're in the process of writing it. And then 7% not yet, but we plan to, and then 9% of no. Okay, so that's a good mix. I mean, that's good to see that a lot of you have some of it written down already.
Brianna, there was Genevieve said, where's the it's written down, but no one cares about it besides me option?
Oh, we're going to have people. Oh, that hurts my heart.
It hurts, right? But it's true. People have to deal with that.
I know.
Hopefully some of the hints we give on how to communicate will help. Hopefully.
Yeah. All right. So there are obviously lots of reasons that we need plans and lots of reasons that you might not have them. Some of them we're a small org. We see this a lot where you're the only marketing person. So you're like, who am I writing this for? Like, it's just me. Why nobody else cares? Things can change fast. So you're thinking a plan might be obsolete in a week, and then just general time. So given, we understand all those things, but really bottom line here is y'all need one. And yay, David's very excited for everyone. Everyone's getting a plan today. You'll see that I try to include Schitt's Creek GIFs as much as possible in my presentations. You might see one a little later as well. But yeah, the point here is just, even when things are uncertain or that, things might change a lot, having something written down is essential, even though those things may happen. And you'll see why as we go through this plan.
I just want to let you know, Brianna, how well you deliver, because Celia had asked that we communicate with her in GIF and here, or GIF, and here you go, right here. Got your Schitt's Creek right here.
Okay. So we're going to go into a little more detail about why these plans, like written plans, are really must-haves. So the first reason is it's really forcing you to focus on that strategy versus the tactics side, okay? So if we think about strategy as what you're going to do versus tactics are how you're going to do it. So a lot of times we jump right in, and I'm guilty. I have done this before, and I try to take a step back in any campaign we're doing, and we definitely do this for planning, but to make sure that, you know, we're writing down the full strategy of what we're doing. So you make sure that you're getting that, you know, strategic mindset before you go out and do the tactics, because otherwise you might be wasting your time or energy pursuing tactics that aren't really returning enough organizational value. Having that time to do that strategy and have a written plan is what creates that. Setting goals. So, you know, this is pretty self-explanatory. Like, you don't really know what you've accomplished if you don't have goals set about what you're setting out to accomplish. The value of marketing. So we're talking about this again. So you're going to share this written plan with your leadership department and other departments that you might align with and work with a lot. Like in our department, we share actually our plan is marketing and sales plan together. But we are the ones that draft it, and then we share it with sales, and they have a lot of input there as well. So yeah, we'll talk a lot about the value of marketing today, like I said, and kind of how this plan is going to show that what you're doing is helping reach the organizational goals. And we talk a lot about laddering up to those goals in this as well. Explaining why you're doing what you're doing. So it's, you know, everything's sort of agreed upon. Everyone knows they're on the same page. You know, it's easy for people then to say, okay, that sounds great, when they know why. So there's just like a little more buy-in there. Helping you say no, which I'm sure this is probably a hot topic for a lot of people. I know this is hard, and I know that not every organization has a culture where you're empowered to say no. But one great thing about having this written plan is when you're showing it to your leadership, and you're showing it to other departments of, you know, here are what we're going to do. You know, if someone comes later and says, hey, we want to do this instead, if it's not laddering up to those goals and it's going to take you off track, you can kind of reference back to that and say, hey, we kind of agreed upon this. I don't really think this is, you know, a good idea for X amount of reasons. Then there could also be that it's a great idea. Nicole has great ideas all the time.
I was just going to say that. I was like, many times Brianna goes, okay, so where does this rank in the goals of this year? This is what we said we were going to do. Which one are we going to take away if we're going to put this in? I agree it's a good idea, but is it good enough to replace this? Or do we need to do like hybrid versions of these things? So we brainstorm it together, but she does tell me no quite a bit. Yeah. Rachel trained her well.
Yeah. Doesn't mean it's a bad idea.
Not at all.
Helping you build a budget. So, you know, just making the case for the needs like resources, technology, software, any of those things that you're going to need. Then aligning your department with other departments. So again, like I said, you're going to share this with other departments that you might help support. So that could be sales, membership, recruitment, fundraising, events, education, enrollment, any department where, you know, you may support them. They can see how you're going to support them, and then what you may need from them as well throughout the year. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, just kind of getting the team in sync and all in the same direction, right? So I mean that in terms of other departments knowing, but also in your team too. So most people usually are in like three buckets. Either they love the planning, they love to be involved in it, or love executing it. So it's really a win-win to kind of get your team moving in sync and excited about what they're going to accomplish. All right, so a little bit about the ownership of the plan. So you're going to want your senior most communication staff member to own the plan. And that's because they're the ones that kind of have the big picture over everything. They're the ones typically talking to leadership about organizational goals. They know what's coming up. They're kind of more plugged in. They'll draft that initial plan and then solicit ideas from team members. So I start with our team of three and a half, because we have a part-time intern. I'm going to say, here's the plan, give me feedback on it. What did we talk about that's not there? Are there any other ideas that we need to include in here? And then after that, we'll share it with the other departments like Nicole in sales, and then share it with my boss, and then share it with leadership. So you're making sure that everyone's sort of seeing how your goals, their goals are being met through our work, our marketing work. If you're head of the department, say sometimes that might look like your leadership team might look like an executive team or a board, like board committee too. So there's lots of different groups you might share with. And I'll also note that it could be that if you're a one-person marketing team, then you are it. You are the owner of the plan.
Guess what? You get to make decisions too if you're one.
Yeah, I know, right? all your ideas are great.
No, not all of them are good. A lot of self-talk happening here.
No. Okay, so we just want to share some like sort of what Mighty Citizen does throughout the year for our marketing ideas. So before we create the written plan, before I do the initial draft, we kind of gather ideas and we have a big brainstorming session. So we actually are doing this next week, which I'm really excited about. So all Mighty Citizens are meeting next Tuesday, and we have our company strategic planning and retreat. And then after we meet with that, with the whole team, the marketing department meets on Friday. And this is when we will have this brainstorming session to walk through everything we went over with the company, and then also all of our marketing ideas so we can get started on our draft. So definitely schedule a time to walk through all of your ideas together. One good place to start is I'd recommend, if you don't already have this, we have a running document of marketing ideas that we kind of just put stuff in throughout the year. And this is open to anyone. So Nicole can put stuff in there. Anyone from the organization can put something in there. So we'll kind of go back and look at that and see they're typically not in any kind of priority order. So that's sort of where we start, and we'll bucket them into like content, events, campaigns. So we can just get a little more structured. And then we kind of use that to create our agenda when we're doing our brainstorming session.
So with that, a lot of times on my coffee, like I'll get an idea or somebody will bring up a hot topic or something that will say, okay, I think we can write content around this, or we need a tool about this. And it ends up going into this marketing idea sheet that then Brianna and team decide which way to go with it. So with that said, don't hesitate to tell Mighty Citizens what content you need, because we'll figure out if it's within our wheelhouse, we'll put it into the sheet and get working on it.
Yeah. And just a couple notes for the marketing ideas here. So the no doesn't mean that it's not a good idea. It just means that we're not prioritizing it. So we go through here and have that yes, maybe no. And then also remember that, again, the team members can be included in other departments. So make sure you share that often and kind of encourage people to add to it. We have like the running list of marketing ideas, but then we also, if there's content ideas included in it, we create an annual content strategy plan, but then what we're actually going to be writing about is planned quarterly. So I'll just note that just allows us to sort of be a little more nimble versus the kind of ongoing planning. So for this template that you're going to use, just some quick notes about it. It is an editable Word doc. It can be open in Google Docs. That's actually what we use. We really like it because it's collaborative and we can see all of each other's comments and feedback. And then you can have a historical notes as well to reference back, which I like. And then just remember it is customizable. So, it follows a structure, but, we know no organization is the same. So no plan is going to be the same. I think what's most important is giving you the tools and the start to create an actual written plan. So you want to do what makes the most sense for your needs and the goals of your department. So it's just make it to what you need it to be.
Yep. And that goes straight into what I'm going to talk about. So what goes into this communications plan? As Brianna mentioned, we made this customizable because each organization, while you face a lot of the same challenges, you're all a little bit different. And you really have to understand your industry, your audiences, and really base that communications plan right around that. So while it's really important to understand those best practices, you got to do the work to really create the strategy that serves you. We've all heard, if you've met one association, you've met one association. You're unique. You have different space, different needs, different audiences. So really embrace that and make it the most of what you can. So with that said, we actually decided that because we're part of Mighty Citizen, we wanted to have a little bit of fun. We wanted to walk you through this, but we created a fictitious International Association of Mighty Citizens. We can't share our clients' plans, so we thought this was a fun way to do it and still kind of walk you through and give you some visuals to be able to relate to. So every time we say it, International Association of Mighty Citizens, you got to do your power pose here. But anyway, we just thought we'd have a little bit of fun. So shout out to all the industries that we serve. You're all Mighty Citizens here. So the checklist itself, for all of our campaigns, we go through this checklist. And trust me, I have yet to go to the marketing team and say, hey, I have this idea that I want to produce. And then what they send me back is, here's the template. Have you thought it through? When you get that done, bring it back to me, right? So it does help you to think through, but the table of contents is the organizational summary, the market analysis, audience goals, or audiences and goals. And Brianna's going to walk you through all of that.
All right. So in the organizational summary of the template, you will see that the executive summary is right at the top there of the communications plan. So the executive summary, most of you probably know what executive summary is. So it's the short and succinct view of the plan. So it's typically for executives or leadership team, and it's going to include those big picture items that you're going to do. So it's not going to include the details, right? Just those overarching goals, what your big plans are for the year. It's an opportunity to showcase your vision for 2022, giving them insight into all this, into what is likely a 10 to 20 page document. Gosh, I don't even think I know how long ours is. I should see. You don't want your executive or leadership team to read the full plan, and you know they probably don't have time to. So some things you could consider too is any larger initiatives. So like we launched the Mighty GPS in February of this year. So you better believe it was in our 2022 plan. So if you're launching any new products or services, do you have an anniversary coming up? Those kind of things you want to consider. Most important about the executive summary is, although it is the first part of the plan, you are going to write this last. It's going to be really hard to try to write this first. You need to fill everything in, and Nicole's going to walk through some of the other important parts, like the market analysis and stuff of why doing all of that and having all the details is going to make it so much easier for you to go back once you've sort of been immersed in the plan. Two other things to include in the organizational summary is vision and mission statement. So, you know, what's the world going to look like when your work is done? And what are you doing every day to accomplish your vision? So no need to rewrite these. You likely have these in other places already, unless they need a relook, but you can just sort of copy and paste them. We just like to include it because it sort of reminds people why you're doing anything related to this plan to begin with, right? And then your products and services. So this is probably not something you would think of including, but it's really important, showing exactly the things you offer, what they're called, is everyone calling them the same thing, which is very important, and get people in alignment there. So we can kind of show you a quick example. So at our International Association of Mighty Citizens, IAMC is what we'll call it for short. This is sort of just listing out, you know, we're an association, it would show out some of the typical products and services, membership, certifications, education, those kind of things. And then deliverables here, just quick hits of what the product or service delivers. So as far as calling everything the same, you want to make sure that every department that, you know, might every department, like the membership department, the education department, if that's separate from marketing and comms, you want to make sure that they understand how the language is used. So one example might be advocacy. We might call it advocacy. Somebody else might call it legislative efforts. It doesn't really matter what you call it. It's the same thing. You just want to make sure that throughout your communications and on your website, everywhere, it's all said sort of the same.
And it matches what your audiences are resonate with.
Right. All right. So the next thing that we're going to look at is communication personnel. So kind of who's on the team and what are they primarily responsible for? So sort of like an accountability chart. So here's an example for IAMC. In our dream marketing team, we have a team of 5. One day, I know that will happen. So you can see here, it's just sort of like giving a quick overview of what the responsibilities are. And this is nice. You can choose to put names in here or not. Actually, in our plan, we have our actual names in here. But what's nice about this is it's helpful as you grow or you have to replace people. So you can kind of see where the responsibilities are and are there things you can take off people's plate because you're adding a new person and where you need to move things around to, ensure you're reaching those goals. So that's nice too. One other note about this is you want to include people that might be in marketing communications that are not in your department. So for example, if you're in a marketing and communications team and there's an events team that has like an event marketing manager and they're part of that team, but they handle marketing for the event, you want to make sure that they're included in this personnel document too. All right, budget is next. So expected revenue and kind of expected marketing spend. So some of you may know Peter Drucker. He's a pioneer of business thinking in 20th century, amazing guy. This is a great quote we like to say often here at Mighty Citizen or tell people. It says, the business enterprise has two functions and only two basic functions, marketing and innovation. Marketing and innovation produce results. All the rest are costs. And marketing is the distinguishing, unique function of the business. So what he's really saying here is marketing is an investment. And if you think of it as a cost, it is time to change your thinking. Now, I know that I am probably preaching to the choir, right? Because this is filled with marketers and communicators of saying, of course, marketing absolutely provides ROI. If it doesn't, well, then you have a new goal, figure out how you can prove the ROI. But I think what's really important here is if you're not having conversations regularly about the value of marketing with the person that sets the budget and leadership, you need to start having those conversations. And this plan can help facilitate that conversation.
Absolutely. I mean, it goes down to this. If I have this great product sitting in my garage and I don't tell anybody about it, am I ever going to sell it?
Yeah, right.
No, not at all.
Exactly. And speaking of budget, just quick note, that comms plan URL that Mindy has been sharing in the end of year toolkit, there's a marketing budget template. It's actually the exact marketing budget template that I use when I create my budget for my system.
All right. So let's talk a little bit about market analysis. We really can't stress enough the importance of knowing your audiences and really the trends that are happening in your industry. Have you guys completed any market research? Do you need to? Do you know upcoming trends and challenges that you're going to be facing in your marketplace on a 2-year, 5-year, 10-year timeline? Like, are you that in touch with your industry? Are you looking in that forward-thinking manner? You can get this information in several ways. You can certainly do audience surveys and ask your members, your donors, your supporters, and other audiences. You can reach out to related organizations like associations or your industry partners, or even for-profit companies that have already done some of this research. You can also do some just reading of industry blogs and resources. So finding the information is not impossible. It sometimes does not have to be a huge lift, but really do the research, figure out and understand your marketplace. What is your market position? Where do you sit in the marketplace? Where are you especially compelling? Consumer Brands calls this market share. So what metrics are you using for this? Are you comparing yourself to others locally, regionally, nationally? Is your market position based on budget or membership or growth or your Google search results rankings? There's several different ways to position that. So make sure that your organization has determined what is success so that you can track it. We see that a lot where they say, oh, I want to do this, but there's no real tracking happening with it. So let's make sure you set those KPIs. And then what is your unique value proposition? What do you do better than anybody else? And how are you going to showcase that this year? You really also want to understand your competition. What are they doing well? What are their weaknesses? And how do you position yourself against them? Remember, your competitors may not be another association or a nonprofit or even a university. Your competition is really anything that's pulling the attention away from your audiences. So when we, again, looked at our organization, the International Association of Mighty Citizens, our competition includes other agencies. It includes educational content coming from the associations or industry partners, perhaps maybe even the American Marketing Association. But we want to look and explore that and understand it. How do we prove to our audiences that we are the best place for them to spend their valuable time, to use our resources, to attend our events, to use our tools, and continue with our education? Knowing all of this information really helps us fill those gaps and create a communication plans that addresses all of those areas.
Yep. Sorry, I just want to make a note. I know someone was mentioning it's difficult to find time for market analysis when you're a one-person show, which I completely understand. Just see some things that I thought of too. I think maybe throughout the year, if you're just sort of regularly reading up on things and keeping up that kind of stuff and like jotting down notes can help. I also think maybe taking like 1 year to dedicate time to do like a thorough thing. Like right now we have that, but I'm, as we speak, updating it for 2023. So it doesn't take nearly as long to do something like that once you have like a basis, once you've started. And then I think talking to other departments too, that might be in tune with some of the stuff already, maybe just like picking their brain. I think that could help too.
Asking some really good questions really helps as well.
Yeah.
Marcom teams, we have a really hard job to do. We are creating communications that speak to a lot of different types of audiences, and each may require different messaging. Actually, most of them do require different messaging and different approaches. They're getting your information in different places than others. And the 4 pillars that Mighty Citizen serves has levels of a complexity inside their audiences. So like a nonprofit has a donor, but they just don't have a donor. They have an individual donor and a major gifts donor. They have capital campaigns. They have all different types of things. They have clients and volunteers that they're talking to. Associations, you have members, but that membership category, you could have 10 different levels of membership under it. Students, lapsed members, your prospective members, your regular members, your legacy members that have been there since the very beginning. So you also have the layered complication of chapters and affiliates and how you communicate with them, right? And all of them have different messaging. You need to address a chapter very differently than you would your individual member. So you have to think of this from a communications level. Universities have students, parents, alumni, and so on and so on. Government is the general public. They're dealing with leadership and citizens and agencies and state leaders. So it's a complex topic that you really need to dig into a little bit. So who are your target audiences and how do you prioritize them? Because obviously one is going to have to be more of a priority than another, but you have to still be able to serve the others. So that's something that's going to be unique to your organization and something that you really need to put a little bit of strategy behind. I would say that keep in mind that any of those audiences, when you say it's a primary audience, make sure that that ladders up to your overarching goal. And I mean, like, for example, like maybe last year we were trying to get like a legislative buy-in. So that was a different message than what we would have in this year when we're trying to retain members, right? So it's just different messaging. All right, let's do a little poll here. How many of you have audience personas or user profiles? And we're going to give you some options here. Yes, and they are written down. Yes, but they live mostly in my head. Not yet, but we're in the process of creating them. Not yet, but we plan to do it this year. No.
Just a quick note, user profiles are more that higher level view versus the deeper dive personas. So they both contain demographics, motivations, pain points, but the personas usually require more in-depth research and time and budgets, and you're typically hiring someone to do that.
They do. And I just want to say, like, don't stress if you don't have a formal proposal or persona or user profile. You likely have a lot of that information that you need to guide your marketing, but kind of formalizing that helps. So do we have these results yet, Mindy? Okay, so 31, yes, they are written and they're written down. 19%, yes, but they live mostly in my head. 8% not yet, in the process of creating them. 11% not yet, but we plan to this year. All I'm going to say, guys, is if you have them written down, please use them. Do not and update them. Like Brianna said, you know, that market research, once you do it, it's easier to update it. Make sure it's up to date and use it because it'll give your communications that much more strength. So, and again, don't stress. Do not stress if you don't have it. You can definitely work around it. Okay. So let's talk about personas a little bit here. So in the case of the International Association of Mighty Citizens, we created 2 personas. And a persona is, again, as Brianna had mentioned, they're concrete representations of your audiences. They include demographics, your age, your role, your length of time in the industry, and then psychographics. Why are they engaging with your organization? What are their motivations? What are their pain points? They really are structured to answer the question of what are your users challenged with and what are they trying to do when they engage with you? What are they turning to you for and fix? And again, that update, their needs are going to change over the years, right? So you want to make sure that you update that. So this information typically comes from user research like surveys, stakeholder interviews, focus groups. Again, it can come from departments. Like a lot of this, you have to start somewhere. So don't just start somewhere. Take a baby step, right? When you have this persona, you can really create a highly targeted communication plan that really speaks to your audiences. And it's the place where you find where their media preferences are and what language or messaging that's going to resonate with them. So as I mentioned, we created 2 for the International Association of Mighty Citizens. A new member persona, Annette, and she's just recently joined. She's joined a couple of webinars. She's dipping her toes in the water of our education and using her membership a little bit. We'll use her information, why she joined, what motivated her in order to communicate to acquire new members. Stephen, he's the dream member. He's highly engaged. He sat on our board. He sends all of his staff to our events and he makes them get certified with our programs. We use his persona for engagement and retention communications. So we're using them in different ways. So it's just a reminder, keep it simple. Like you really want to create these profiles that contain data, but also that don't bog you down. You want it something that's actionable and that you can use to really strengthen your communications.
Yeah, and kind of reality is, unless you're able to hire someone, the personas can really take a long time. So you got to have a budget or you got to have a big team. So that's why we mentioned those user profiles too, because you can get information from your member database. There's all sorts of demographic information and just stuff that you know about your audiences already. So you can use that and then look at what those are and pick the audiences that you're going to focus on for the year when you're writing your plan.
Yep, absolutely. They definitely help if you have them, but they're not required. You guys have a lot of information in your head and information that you have that you just need to kind of formalize down. All right. So we have your audiences. You've chosen, let's say, 3 personas that you want to target this year. And now you really want to create that list of key current members or donors or customers or audiences that you really want to engage with. You want to target them this year to increase that engagement and grow them and get them more involved with your organization. So really write those down. Then you're going to list out your prospective members, donors, and customers and other audiences. These are the people that you just know. You're like, why haven't they signed up yet? You know they should be part of it. You want to understand that and really capture that information down. Then we're going to look at the channels. Where are these folks engaging with you? Your analytics are going to help you here. Really, are they following you on social media? If so, where are your audiences following you? What age groups are following you in what areas? Like try to identify some trends, figure out the analytics there. Are they following you on Facebook and Twitter and Snapchat, or is it through email? Are they clicking on links in your newsletters? Are they attending your events? Let's figure out how they're engaging. Then you want to decide exactly how you're going to target them and create the communications plan. And your personas and your profiles that you created, they're really going to help you decide what channels you're going to use and how you're going to actually communicate with them.
All right, so now we're going to talk about goals. So I want you to set 3 goals. You can set more, but we've seen, and you'll see why here in a little bit, of why 3 is about right. It seems to be a pretty good number. So these are going to be big goals. Like, what are your top 3 initiatives that you need to do this year to get closer to your vision to help meet those organizational goals? So these are outside of things that kind of just have to get done. So that's one reason you want to limit them. Another reason to limit them is you don't want to overcommit your team, right? So we have 3.5 people I told you on our team. So I kind of have a good sense of what it means in terms of what they're going to be able to get done. And we don't want to put too much in the plan, have too many goals where we're never going to get to them. And there are people counting on us. And I tell Nicole, we're going to do all these things. And then we can't get to it because we've overcommitted. So just try to limit that. One idea and something that we do is making room for just knowing that things are going to come up that are not anticipated. So a buffer. So if I know, okay, with 3 people or 4 people, we can get this amount done, I'll put around 85% in the plan. So that's leaving the room that you need. And then we will also include optionals for certain actual tasks that we're going to do related to the goals, just knowing that that may be something that gets cut if we need to. Priority order is another good way to list out these goals. So again, if you have to cut something, you'll know that they're in priority order and know what to cut first. You want these to be kind of broad and strategic. Again, not really tactical, there's not going to be details there. That comes later, we'll talk about. Remember, these goals are laddering up to the organizational goals. So, for example, if you have a goal to increase student admissions by 10%, then you need to have specific marketing goals to reach that, right? Leadership needs to be able to see their goals in your plan and your work. Some of the goals are going to likely be dictated by your board or executives. They might be, and then you're going to have some freedom with others. So laddering up. And then just a quick note, we don't list our goals first because you really need to think through all of the organization, that market analysis that Nicole talked about, just kind of your place, your audiences that you want to focus on. And then once you have all of that, then you'll be able to set those realistic and kind of strategic goals after. So this is just a quick example. So again, your full executive summary is going to be the 1 to 2 pages at the front of your plan. So this is just an example of how your goals could look in the executive summary. So very high level. So it's just showing we'll be successful if we reach these goals. So in the case of IAMC, we curated 3 goals: for retaining membership, increasing revenue through our use of products and services. And then because we're a new organization as of today, we need to increase our brand awareness. So you'll see here again, high level, they don't have metrics, activities, or any details on them because we don't want to include that in the executive summary, just want it broad. Okay, so for our goals, under each goal, you're going to have activities. So you're going to ask for each goal, what activities will we undertake to reach this goal? And that's sort of where your tactics are going to come in. So if the goal is to retain membership, what activities need to be done to help reach that goal? And you typically would have, I would recommend having 1 to 5, not any more than 5 activities per goal. Then under each of those, you're going to look at the metrics. So how do you know that, how are you going to measure if those are successful or not? So every activity should have a metric attached to it. And that's what you're going to use to report on. However you report, we'd recommend quarterly to your leadership teams. We actually do monthly reporting, and then we report all of our KPIs quarterly to leadership. And then the tactics. So this is what tactics must be completed for each activity. So this is where all your little tasks come in. So all those things that you're going to go back and you're doing every single day to sort of reach your goals. So you can see this is sort of a structure. So it kind of helps make sure the tactics you're doing are leveraging up to something. So the tactics you're doing to meet the activities that are meeting the goals of your department, and then the organizational goals, just sort of a ladder up. Mm-hmm. Okay, so we're going to show you an example here, of what it would look in the plan. So for IAMC, we have that goal of retaining membership. So we're going to have activity 1. We've decided that we're going to improve the new member onboarding experience in order to retain membership. So the idea here is we want to make sure that their initial experience, they're seeing the value of their membership and using their benefits right away. And a lot of times membership is sort of an emotional decision. So we want them to connect very quickly to their network and their people, and just facilitating that conversation. So we see our metric. We know we've been successful. We've set an 80% renewal in year 1. And then we also set, you don't have to do this, but we set stretch metrics because we're overachievers, I guess. Oftentimes we'll meet our main goal, and it's just something nice to, look out to and reach for more. It looks good too for leadership. Some quick notes about metrics. So usually there's some, depending on what you're doing, there's some data that exists, again, like Google Analytics, your data management systems, any other integrated analytics platforms you have that you can look at past performance. It gets a little hard if it's something new, obviously, because you don't really have anything to go off of. So some ideas are, you could look at industry benchmarks. A lot of associations that serve your industries come out with research and reports, which can help there. And then also just talking to people in your industry or community, maybe they've done stuff like this before. At worst, it's your best guess. We actually, because, Nicole mentioned we just got into HubSpot, there was lots of reporting and attribution and stuff that we weren't ever able to report on before. So we were collecting a lot of data this year that we're going to use now that we're planning. We're using that as a benchmark now moving forward to set, real goals. Cool. All right. And then Nicole, I think you're going to go over activity 2.
Yep. So we have done the research and we looked at it and we see that those who attend our annual meeting are more likely to renew. So what we want to do is drive traffic to the annual meeting, get some people engaged in that and get them turned into members that stay. So we're really going to focus on that member activity and getting them involved at the event and see how we can do that. So again, we set the same things, metrics, stretch metrics, and then we take those tactics, turn them into tasks, and see where we are. But this is why we limit it to 3, because they can be a little bit complex.
Yeah.
All right. So how do we manage this plan? I'm going to go through this and dig through it. This is actually my favorite part. Okay. So poll, how often are you checking back on your plan? This is just, what do you think? More than monthly, quarterly? I don't have a regular cadence. I don't have a marketing plan. Not after today. You're going to have one.
Nicole, we took that poll out.
Oh, I'm sorry. When did you take it out? Okay. So anyway, never mind. So check the status at least monthly. What we do, we are actually looking at it and we do it in different kind of chunks, but make sure that everything is moving in the right direction. In order to do that, you really have to check on it and make sure that you know. Where you should be? Do you need to pivot and make any type of strategic changes? You're going to update the plan quarterly. So that's where you really want to make sure if you have to make any big changes, and you're going to make notations, which will show you one of those. You're going to add metrics to track that progress and share that information with the team. And then we'll show you an example of this on that next slide here. So as you can see, this was that retained member growth for 2022. So let's fast forward. We're going to pretend it's September 30th of 2023. And she's hit that goal. She's at 85%. So Brianna's gone in here. She's updated it. We use Google Docs here at Mighty Citizen just to keep everything collaborative. But you can see you want to notate it in here. We want to be able to see this. And then we're going to relate that back to our teams to make sure that they know and they can see what they're doing. So keep in mind, though, your plans can change. We all saw this in 2020. It was just an absolutely crazy year. And quite frankly, there's times when you can modify your plan. And then there's times when you just need to scrap it and start over. 2020 was one of those years. So you'll know when you have to do those things, but it's never too late. Like, always take a look at it and adjust it.
Yeah, I would say the marketing plan is a living, breathing document. So things are going to change. Things are going to get updated. They're not going to, be, but having that written plan and that strategy and all that like forethought in the beginning is key, right?
Yep, absolutely. So we want to make sure that you share this plan and you get buy-in. We've heard a little bit of chatter in here that, you're the marketing team of one and you're the only one who cares about the plan. We've got to get people, they're not going to be as passionate as you. That's just the reality. This is your specialty. But the reality is they do need to understand your value, what you can achieve, and how they're achieving more because of the marketing communications teams. So what you want to do is make sure that you're sharing the right amount. So typically we share with executives, board committees on a quarterly basis. We share it with the full staff a few times a year. I love our marketing team in our production meeting. They'll just say, guys, we hit this metric. Like it's an overview. Anytime you are onboarding new staff, you really want to review this, even if it's somebody who's not on your team. Like, you want to give them an overview to show what the value of the communications team is doing and really get that information going. If it's a member of the leadership team, like a new CEO or a CFO, you definitely want to showcase how the communications plan is laddering up to the strategic goals, because what you're doing is going to make them more successful. Okay. So we don't want to overcomplicate things. We want to make sure that this is something that you can do. We don't want to make it any harder. So what we suggest is doing this in different bite sizes. So for your full staff, you're going to give them a very high level overview of what's going on. You definitely want to share your success stories and show how you're helping to build the organization. You're going to give what we call a snack size to the executive team on a quarterly basis. This group likes statistics. They like ROI. They want things that are going to relate directly to those numbers, right? Because that's what they have to report to. Your communications team needs a full meal, and they need that on a regular basis. This is your army on the ground, and they need to see the full picture so that they can know when they need to adjust and where they stand, and how they can help to achieve results. So when you create this type of a communication cycle where you're showcasing and showing the value of the organization on a regular basis, it kind of helps to get some buy-in, and it may help your staff to also understand why you have some processes, like why you have to go through the communications team to add something to the newsletter, or why you have to follow branding guidelines, or why can't you just build your own website, right? So stop them from going rogue. Let's just communicate.
Brand please.
Yes.
All right.
It's a whole nother session.
I know, right?
I have whistles.
Summing this all up, you need a written communications plan. That is probably, if one thing you walk away from, even if you don't use our template, is you need a written plan. Again, remember, don't overcommit on your goals. Remember, if you can buffer and do that 85%, especially if you have a team, or very small team, or a one-person thing. So, and things might come up that are unanticipated. You want to get that buy-in from your team and leadership, so they really see the value of your marketing efforts. So showing them the plan and bringing it up often and sharing those metrics. So speaking of metrics, setting the clear metrics so you know exactly what success looks like, and then you can also use that for benchmarking, and then tracking those metrics and reporting on it quarterly is essential. All right. We did that perfectly, right in an hour, Nicole.
I thought for sure we were going to be over. Like, yeah. I almost messaged you like 4 times to go, okay, we got to move this forward faster. No, we're good.
Yeah. So we're about to have everyone hop on. I think there are quite a few questions. So excited.
There were some great questions in the chat. I know that Mindy was capturing them.
So we're going to send this out tomorrow to everyone, but the slides, the recordings, and tools from the first 2 sessions you can grab. There's URLs there. And then today's slides, and we will add the recording, and the communications plan template and end of year toolkit is available right there. Okay. So I am going to, I think I have a Google Doc that has some questions, and then Jared and Cass and Rachel and everyone, if you guys want to pop on up. Hello
team.
Hello everyone. Hello.
Thanks y'all for coming on. Appreciate it. All right, sorry, I'm just moving things around. Get X out of the chat here. Okay. Let's see. First question. And I'm just going to sort of like ping it to whoever I think might be a good person to answer. I feel like sometimes it can be difficult to make suggestions to marketing when you're not in the marketing team. How do you recommend approaching marketing to ask them for more insight into some of those processes? Also about new technology options to consider. So I'll make a note that one thing I think is, making sure that the the departments are talking a lot and have really good relationships is key. I think that helps just to like start that conversation. And then the approach too is, if we make our processes very open and transparent, we make sure everyone gets input on certain things, and they feel empowered to be able to ask about, adding new things in, but then we're also very clear on the expectations. So they have the plan, they've seen that, knowing that if we are going to do this, we need to get what the value of it is. And just like Nicole was saying, is it more important? Is it going to ladder up? Are we going to have more potential success with it than something else that we have in the plan? So I think if you're having issues with insights into some of their processes of, literally just, talking to them, asking to sit down and talk about it. And, hopefully someone in the leadership team in those departments will, start, being a little more transparent about how all of that works.
A lot of this also is company culture as well, and that open communication piece, and that you're all moving in the same direction. I know that relationship development piece is like you're all of those different departments will succeed more if you're working together in a way that you can do. But I think sometimes that requires some conversations.
Right. Great. Okay. Let's see. Is the mission and vision from the organization or from the communications plan? So that would be from the organization. Rachel, I don't know if you want to add anything to that. When we're talking about the mission and vision statement that gets added, I mean, that would be from what's created from the organization, and we're just adding it into the communications plan.
Yeah, and we add it because the communications we're putting out should fall under the mission and vision of the organization, right?
Mhm.
Should feel like it belongs.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. How much time does it take to complete this overall, the whole communications plan? That is a good
The
question.
first time you did it, Rachel, let's think the first time you did it, because I know sometimes, again, the next time you do it, I know you want to start fresh each year to make sure you have fresh ideas, but it's always hard the first time.
Definitely easier in subsequent years, because the first year you're just kind of getting the lay of the land. And then once you've got that draft, you can usually build on it in future years and just sort of tweak the things that need to be tweaked. I would say, I think when we were a marketing department of one, so me, myself, and I think I blocked 2 full days, and that's about how long it took. Now we have a larger team, and so we have more collaboration, and it takes longer because of that. And we brought in sales to help collaborate as well. So it probably now, with the person who's leading it, Bree, you can tell me what you think, but I would say it probably takes what those, if you combined all the meetings and everything into days, it'd probably be 3 or 4 days.
Yeah, I would agree. And what I would say, something that helps with that, I think too, is the structure and the brainstorming leading up to it, right? So when we were saying that we have that document full of ideas, and then we go and we meet and brainstorm, we prioritize those. And when we meet next Friday, we are like literally whiteboarding, and we structure everything. The notes that we walk away from it is structured the way that the communications plan is. So it's actually really nice, because I can go back and put it, then just write down the written document, and then we obviously review it after that. But having something like that in place and keeping that in mind when you're doing the brainstorming definitely cuts down. All right, let's see. Can you say more about ROI on user profiles? Like, how specifically do you use them in crafting your communications? Let's see, I guess I would, Rachel, or
take it. I don't know that there's a very direct correlation to ROI unless you are using a CRM or marketing automation platform that specifically tracks that user by their user type. So for example, we use HubSpot. We know where someone is in our funnel based on the type of user we have them flagged as. And so we can look and say, okay, this user type we saw generated this much revenue. But that's a pretty sophisticated thing that a lot of orgs don't have. I would say if you don't have those things, it's really hard to track. It's just straightforward. Was there a second part of that question?
It said, like, how specifically do you use them in crafting your communication? So maybe an example of how you would use them in your campaigns.
Yeah, and I'll be honest with you guys. Audience profiles or audience personas, you could go crazy with them, and you could have like 10 of them, right? Like take your average nonprofit, for example. You could have like 3 or 4 just for donors, lapsed donors, major donors, one-time donor. I mean, you could slice and dice them any number of ways. The more you slice and dice, the more work they create for you. Because if you have that content, then you have to actually use it, or the point of it is to use it in some way. And therefore you've got to create 5 different versions of a donor email. So how we use it, when we use ours, we are primarily breaking them out by industry, because we have 4 industries that we serve, all mission driven. And that's how we're using it. So it's mostly around those industry breakdowns, but I'll tell you, each of the newsletters that we write, we don't do individual content for each industry all the time, but each of the newsletters that go out every month, there's 5 different versions for our industries plus another.
Well, and I think even yesterday's event was all about segmentation and understanding your audiences and tracking the analytics and really using the data that you have available to you. And all organizations, like even if you're, you have the opportunity to really, you have more data at your fingertips than you think you do.
Yeah. Sometimes it is overwhelming to sift through it all. So you really have to figure out like what's your source of truth. So for example, like we said, we just got into HubSpot. And so this year we were sort of like, we put everything out there of like what we thought we would need to track, and we would do the monthly reporting. We just met again to be like, do we need to be tracking everything that we're tracking? Because it was a lot. So we kind of pared it down, but I mean, we just didn't know what we didn't know, right? So we're looking at what are those true metrics, like our source of truth that we're going to use to, report moving forward.
Brianna and I were talking today too about just in our own plan, embedding A/B testing into that to make sure that you can see what works and what doesn't. And I think this process looks overwhelming to some, and it is thought provoking. It is something that is going to take time to actually look at, but keep it simple. Start somewhere. Like it doesn't have to be absolutely perfect. It's going to evolve.
The other thing I would add, somebody asked, is it worth creating these profiles if we don't have time to differentiate communications? Absolutely not. Why go to the work of creating the profiles if you're not going to use them? The only value they have is if you use them. And yeah, when I say 5 newsletters, we use HubSpot. So there's something called smart content. So technically it's one newsletter with a bunch of different content based on the industry. And HubSpot does that work for us. So again, unless you have some technology that's going to allow you to make that process a little more efficient, it's a lot of work.
Yeah. Can you explain the difference between audience personas and user profiles one more time? So the audience personas are the ones that it's like deeper level of research, right? So they're both going to have the demographics. The audience profile is going to have more of that psychographics and those pain points, their challenges. Usually it's done through user research of surveys and focus groups, and those 2 slides that the 2 profiles that we had up, it had all sorts of information. So it's a very in-depth of like who your audience or profile is. The user profiles, you're typically just using demographic information and sort of anecdotal information that about your audience, which you all do. So you're going to get that information from the data platforms that you have, and then anything maybe like event survey feedback that you have, or things that you've heard when you've been at events. It's a much quicker and cheaper way to kind of quickly create those. All right, Cass, I got one for you. You ready?
I'm ready.
What is GA4?
But I'm bummed.
Wow. Good question. And I'm sure a lot of people are wondering the same thing. So Universal Analytics is what we all know of the current Google Analytics name. It's the current Universal Analytics brand name for Google Analytics. Google announced recently, or within the last several months, that they will be sunsetting Universal Analytics, or what we all use as Google Analytics now, July 1 of 2023. And that is because they're rolling out GA4, or Google Analytics 4. It's an enhanced version of Google Analytics. It has a lot more advanced tracking, a lot more capability for cross-domain tracking. So if a user on your site is visiting multiple of your domains, or jumping between domains, or apps, or other type of properties that you own, it's really good for that. It uses AI and machine learning to give you better data insights and reports for your web performance and your web traffic and analytics. And there's just a lot more advanced tracking in terms of event measurement. It kind of reshapes the way we look at data for website analytics. A lot of the terms have changed. It requires a completely new setup than what we're used to for Google Analytics. So it's something y'all should really look at. and start talking with your team about, because you will be affected by it if you're currently using Universal Analytics right now, especially when it comes around to July 1, 2023, you will start losing your data. It will no longer be tracked in Universal Analytics, and you will need to make the switch to GA4.
And I'll just add a note that our the second session in the series was all about digital trends, and one big portion of that was GA4. So Cass goes into a little more detail. And then Mindy, when you have a chance, we have a couple articles on it, and we even have a tool that we just created. So there's like an introductory article on Google Analytics.
He's on it.
Yeah,
it's already in the chat.
Okay, there's another one on custom events, and then there's a more detailed one on even creating custom events. So it'll give you a lot.
Yep. So setup doesn't have to be difficult. You don't have to be an expert in Google Analytics to make sure it's set up. We've got a really good article that's been linked in the chat to help you do that. There are a lot of resources on Google on how to set things up. So it is something you can do fairly easy, but just something you'll want to pay attention to before the year ends, and especially at the beginning of 2023.
Jarrett, I'll let you take this one. Can you share just a little bit more about the process for tailoring the content of the one newsletter to the audiences? So we just talk about what we do, how we decide. I think that kind
of. Yeah. And it is a process for sure. So, you know, Mighty Citizen, we have multiple audiences, mission-driven industries that we work with. You know, we're producing a lot of content around the clock for these audiences, and, you know, a newsletter, not every single piece of content needs to go to every single one of our audiences. And that may be the same case for you. So with HubSpot, Rachel mentioned, we're able to do what's called smart content or smart rules for content. So essentially in one editor, I'm able to take sections of the newsletter and say, hey, if the person that is reading this is on our nonprofit list, they're going to get served this specific piece of content or this case study or X, Y, and Z. Same for the rest of our different industries that we work with. So it's a really convenient way to be able to get a lot more hyper-tailored content out, more valuable, helpful content to the people who need to see it, and they're not seeing any content that they shouldn't be seeing. So,
yeah, and I'll add, you know, we plan like I mentioned, we plan the annual content strategy, and then we have the quarterly content strategy. So we kind of decide what content, and Jarrett owns that, what content we're gonna, and we source it from a bunch of different areas of what we're going to be writing about. But typically part of that plan is thinking about what audiences we've decided in our communication plans that we're focusing on. And usually because of the size of our team, it's typically 2 that we're mainly focusing on. And then that kind of helps drive what we decide on our content. And then we'll be able to serve up more of that customized content to those audiences in our Insights newsletter.
I think I also want to mention it really starts with the data you capture as well. Like, we could not segment those lists if we weren't capturing what type of organization it was, right? So we have to understand what personas we're tracking and how, and the markets that we want to track, and making sure we're capturing the data so that we then can create the communications plan around that. So it is holistic. You have to look at it from many different angles and make sure that you have the data you need in order to create the experience that you want to have. But I can tell you now, I'm sure there's an association on here. You wouldn't necessarily want an article on universities, right? So you might, but it's not likely. So we want to make sure that we give you what you need from us. And these tools allow us to do that, but it has to start with the data that we capture too.
And that can certainly be a pitfall of marketing technology. And that's a really great point, Nicole, because, you know, as easy as it is to set up smart rules and smart content, it took a lot of work on the back end just to organize our data and migrate it into HubSpot and get it all cleaned up and to maintain it. And it does take quite a bit to do that. So it's something to keep in mind in terms of resources.
We could have a whole other webinar about all that. Let's see, Jarrett, one more question about content. I'll let you answer. How does Mighty Citizen capture users' interest for content? Do you do an annual survey or anything unique that you're able to share?
Oh, how timely. I am able to share. If you do get our Insights newsletter in November, in just a couple of weeks, we'll be sending one out. I'm going to include a survey you might get, just trying to gauge your audiences, especially as I get into my content planning season. just to see, you know, what's resonating. Of course, we have our digital marketing tools, but there's nothing better than just some anecdotal surveying of our audiences. So being able to see what they're engaging with, what they think about our content, some of the struggles that they have, the things that they want to learn about, the things that they don't have time to learn about, really all those things that we want to consider whenever I am building out my content strategy. So that's a great place to start. It's just one of the few things that we do, just to kind of figure out what we want to put out there.
Yep.
I would add too, we back that up with our own data. So looking at Google Analytics, what are our most popular articles, our most popular tools, what content are people going to and sharing? So that's like the other method that, you know, people have that you have access to as a marketer.
Well, and then 2 years ago we did, we have the advantage of being a marketing department at a marketing agency. So we have lots of talented people, including a user, user research department. So we did interviews with different segments of the industry. We did a whole research project too a couple of years ago that helped us with that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll chime in just very quickly. You can also, if you do have access to someone who knows their way around SEO, you can add on some SEO research to look into what types of topics your audiences are regularly searching to get to your site or to your competitor sites. And that can also help with gauging content interest for creation.
Yeah, to be absolutely clear, some of those digital marketing tools are the best ways to find out how your content is performing, and you can absolutely lean on some of the free tools too.
And that second session that Cass and Jared did, there's a whole slide that has links to a ton of free digital tools, including some SEO stuff. So definitely check those out. Jared, a lot of content questions.
We've opened up Pandora's box.
Yeah.
I'm ready.
What does your content schedule look like? So we want to talk about what that process is.
Yeah, so we keep an editorial calendar. It's the same exact one that we have a template for on our website. We use that exact one. It is my day-to-day, and it holds everything that we publish. We come around to it every single week in our weekly marketing meeting. We talk about everything that's coming down the line, what we need for each piece of content. It also kind of is responsible for maintaining the content governance of it all. So who's responsible for each piece of content? When is it getting published? What happens after it gets published in terms of maintenance? So we are constantly visiting this document just to see what's coming on the line. And we have to have some consensus around it consistently, or else things get, lost pretty quickly. So I
want to circle back to that original question, Bri, about how does someone go to marketing and facilitate the conversation about, having marketing help them. Depending on your marketing team, they will have a content calendar and they sort of know for the year roughly when things are happening. And so, if you can get access to their content calendar, and that helps you better make your case, like this fits here and here's why.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's a great point. Let's see, I can quickly answer this. So how does unsubscribing work with smart content? Do users opt in or out of every segment descriptor? So no, so there's just a general opt-in or opt-out. So how our smart content works, so when you get our Insights newsletter, not every single thing is customized. There are tons of articles that we do that are applicable to all of our audiences. So for example, our new GA4 article, everyone's going to get that. And then there's literally like a content block that we're able to segment based off of what industry someone is in, and they will just be served that content. So they're still getting a newsletter that has an unsubscribe, and if they unsubscribe, they're unsubscribing to our communications fully. All right, let me see.
I'm going to put out there, if you have unsubscribed to any of our communications and want to get back in, please go back in and sign up.
They can't be on this webinar. They will have had. I don't know if anyone knows that. Off the top of my head, I don't know, because typically we'd work with a company. So someone's asking, can you recommend some audience research platforms? There's a whole lot out there, and sometimes the information is conflicting.
I can give a couple of suggestions, at least from a digital perspective. We actually work with Meltwater, which is a combination of social listening and audience research. It is a little bit complicated to set up, and it is a bit pricier. However, a lot of agencies like us work with tools like this to conduct audience research, to get some more insight on your potential users. So Meltwater, for example, uses a combination of social media content and engagement and audience research. It'll use forums and blogs and web posts and other types of media. So it looks all over the internet for what your audience is doing, how you've defined your audience, what their demographics, psychographics, interests, behaviors are like, and we'll give you very advanced kind of reports for that. Meltwater is not the only tool. There are some other tools you can use, like Social Buff, and there are a ton of other free versions where you can get bits and pieces of that. So there are a lot of digital tools you can get that will give you some insight into your audiences online. So that's what I can provide from a digital perspective. I don't know if anyone else has some other recommendations.
No. Yeah, I think most of them would do digital. Okay. All right. I think we have time for one more, and it's kind of a big one. And I'm going to give it to Rachel. So, and I could chime in too. So, we mentioned HubSpot, and we were talking about collecting data and how we're reporting. So they're just wondering if we could say a little bit more about that, like what that kind of data collection looks like and reporting looks like that we're doing.
Oh gosh, that is a big question. Okay. We've mentioned that reporting starts with data. So we got into HubSpot, I guess it's been just a little over a year ago. And so when we got into HubSpot before, we were coming from, I've forgotten the name because I hated it so much. Zoho. I'm from Zoho. They're all, none of them are great, right? We made sure that we cleaned up the data and had it like everything we brought in was clean, because I think that's the first thing. Second thing is the reporting in HubSpot. There's a lot of different ways to do reporting. And we had to kind of figure out, it was a new system to us. So we had to figure out what we really needed to track. So it's really, it happens often that marketers, I'm curious about everything, right? I could get into data. I could spend all day in data, digging a little further, looking at this other thing. Well, what if this? It's a waste of time, unless you're going to do something with that curiosity. So we had to back up and say, what do we actually need to track? And then what we can do with the data once we have it. So for us, that comes down to the marketing plan. We're like, okay, here's the activities and the tactics we're doing this year. How will we know we've been successful? What is a metric for each of those? And then that became the things that we were tracking. Now, some things we were like, well, we're new in HubSpot and we had never been able to track this data before. So it became benchmarking data. Like I can't really I don't know what a proper goal around it would be because we've never done it. So like the Mighty GPS, we launched that earlier this year. That's that self-assessment for marketing maturity. And we didn't know what a reasonable expectation for submissions would be because we'd never done it before. So we said, that's going to be benchmarking data. And we started tracking it so that next year we have a year of content or a year of data. And we can say, okay, we know that we want to increase that by 10%. Here's what that would look like. So I think that's one thing. The other thing, as Bri mentioned, is we did go back and cut things. So we've now been collecting data for 9 months, about to be 10 months. And there's just things that we look back at it and we go, we wouldn't really do anything for that. So I think there's this, you have to fight against the marketer's natural instinct to want to know everything, because there's too much. We can't know everything, right? I mean, unless you get a huge team, there's really just too much.
I think we need a support group, Rachel.
Yeah. Oh my God. I feel like the marketer's downfall is that rabbit hole. Oh my God, that rabbit hole, that data rabbit hole, right? I know we're all going like, yeah. I have to like stop myself and be like, what are you doing? You can't spend any more time on this.
Right. Supposed to be doing something else.
I know, right?
And
all right.
The other thing too with that is we do add on a combination, not just HubSpot. So we also look at data from Google Analytics and other sources too. So it's more of a holistic view. So then you can go into an even larger rabbit hole. But if you kind of combine where your data is coming from, it gives you a better view and not just siloed into one area.
That's a good point too, Cass, because the data that comes from both of them is slightly different. So you have to go like, which one is the point of truth? So we have some benchmarks or some questions or metrics we're doing that are in Google Analytics because we've had it for a really long time. And then we have others that were like, okay, we've never had this before. This is HubSpot is the source of truth.
Right.
So that's a whole other thing.
And that's why we say it's so hard to keep your data clean. This is a perfect example.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Well, we only have a few minutes left, so I think we'll stop here. Thank you, Rachel, Jarrett, Cass, for hopping on. Nicole, thank you for presenting with me. Thank you, everyone who has stayed until the end. We do have a survey that pops up when we all get off here. If you wouldn't mind providing your feedback, we do take it seriously. We look at it quarterly and we make improvements based off of it. So we appreciate everyone's time. Happy planning.